Mercer University's political science students are working to increase voter engagement. It's all part of a class project. But as Election Day approaches, the pandemic is impacting how and where college students are voting. Our Ashlyn Webb reports on the obstacles facing our youngest voters.
Political science students here at Mercer University have spent the last few weeks registering students to vote. But now that the deadline has passed here in Georgia, they're focusing their efforts on educating students on voting and also making sure they show up at the polls. But they say COVID-19 has made everything a little bit more difficult.
So college campuses, especially now with the onset of COVID, has really thrown a wrench into a lot of plans for voting and for how college students are thinking about voting. Got a lot of absentee and mail-in voting being a big issue and topic this year.
Now that the registration deadline has passed, many students have to decide whether to vote in person or apply for an absentee ballot.
A lot of students are having to either decide should they mail in their absentee ballot or should they go back home and risk that exposure.
But the pandemic has also affected getting out the vote. Sophomore Drew Williams, a member of Mercer's Young Democrats, says they're balancing virtual events with in-person ones with COVID-19 precautions.
We want to stay on campus and we want to have in-person education. And I think there's a fear that if we do too much events and we're not careful enough, then cases could go up and we could end up getting sent home.
In addition to staging voting registration booths and speaking to classes, these students are reminding their peers about online resources.
Just because people are a little bit more hesitant to want to go out and do these things in person, so we've really tried to focus on letting people know that you can do a lot of stuff online, whether it be checking your registration status. You can mail in a lot of things like your absentee ballot.
The group is also advocating for their peers to understand that their voice matters.
One of the biggest misconceptions for young voters is that they don't believe their vote counts, and the voter registration booth is just another way to tell and explain to them their vote does count.
This election, 1 in 10 eligible voters are part of Generation Z, many of which will vote for their first time this November.
There is an enthusiasm amongst them. There is an interest, there's engagement that we haven't seen before.
These students are also encouraging their peers to have an action plan, so to know when, where, and how to vote, and also to know those important election deadlines. Reporting in Macon, Ashlyn Webb, 13 WMAZ News.
Thank you, Ashlyn. The deadline to apply for an absentee ballot in Georgia is October 30th.